Welcome to Curiosity, the podcast where science meets wonder. Join us as we explore the fascinating, the innovative, and the unexpected, from the secrets of the cosmos to the marvels of everyday life. Each episode takes you on a journey to uncover the knowledge and stories that fuel our endless quest for understanding. Let your curiosity guide you.
Welcome. So today we're looking at something that is, well, it's a really tangible problem, plastic waste. For decades, our main strategy has been, reactive. We rely on these systems recycling, waste management that often feel overwhelmed.
Completely overwhelmed, inefficient, and sometimes they're just not able to keep up with the sheer volume of synthetic materials we're turning out.
Exactly.
And that reactive approach has, I think we can all agree, pretty much hit its limits. We're talking about materials that are fundamentally engineered for permanence.
For centuries.
For centuries, yeah. So what we're going to unpack today is a genuinely revolutionary breakthrough in material science that sort of changes the whole game.
Okay.
We're focusing on research from Rutgers University, recently published in Nature Chemistry. And the core idea here is they've extracted a chemical secret, a trick, really, that they borrowed from nature.
A trick from nature. I like that.
Yeah, and it allows us to program synthetic materials to just break down on command. It offers, for the first time, really, a scalable chemistry-based path to ending this whole accumulation problem.
That's fascinating. And it forces us to ask this really fundamental question.
Yeah.
You think about nature, right? Biology makes these incredibly complex, long-stranded molecules.
Polymers.
Right, DNA, RNA, the cellulose in a tree.
Yeah.
All of these things serve their purpose, and then they disappear. They're dismantled. They go back into the system without leaving this permanent mess. So if the building blocks of life are polymers, and the plastics we make are also polymers, why did biology figure out the end-of-life problem billions of years ago, while we're still stuck with plastic that outlives entire civilizations?
It's the ultimate paradox, isn't it? The natural world is built on durability, but it's also inherently ephemeral.
Yeah.
And our artificial world is built on durability, but it's, inherently immortal. So today we're going to unpack that scientific journey, starting right at the moment this whole idea sparked. And it wasn't in a lab.
The story of this breakthrough doesn't begin in a high-tech lab with a, $1 million spectrometer or something. It starts much more simply. It starts on a trail.
That's right. The catalyst for this whole line of inquiry was just a simple, but I think profoundly jarring sight.
Experienced by whom?
By Dr. Yuwei Gu. He's the Rutgers chemist who led this project. And he was just out for a hike in Bear Mountain State Park in New York.
Bear Mountain. So we're talking about a place known for its pristine beauty, its sense of real wilderness.
Exactly. The location is so crucial to the story. He was surrounded by, millennia of successful natural engineering. You have the forest floor cycling nutrients, trees growing, and then eventually just returning to the soil. He's literally observing biology doing what it does best.
Building complex structures with polymers.
And then cleaning up its own mess. Perfectly.
But that serenity, that perfect system, was broken. And what stopped him wasn't, some breathtaking view. It was the all too familiar sight of our refuse.
Plastic
bottles scattered along the trail, reflecting sunlight on a nearby lake. This physical evidence of the plastic accumulation problem right there, in what should be nature's sanctuary, it created this visceral comparison that really spurred the whole hypothesis.
That contrast just highlights the fundamental failure of our own material design. On one hand, you have the natural world running with its full suite of biological polymers, cellulose, proteins. All these things are built from long chains that eventually degrade perfectly.
Right.
And on the other hand, you have our synthetic polymers, the plastics, which are chemically designed to defy natural degradation and remain, for all intents and purposes, immortal. They just clog the whole system.
And that mismatch, that's what led directly to Gu's core realization. He recognized that since both of them, natural structures and plastics, rely on the same basic architectural principle.
These long-stranded polymers.
Right, these polymers. The difference, the reason one can degrade and the other can't, he said, it has to lie in chemistry, specifically in the really fine-grained structural differences at the molecular level. And just for anyone listening, let's quickly define what we mean by a polymer, since it's so central to this.
Okay.
A polymer is just a very large molecule, and it's composed of many identical or similar repeating units. We call them monomers. Imagine beads on a string. That's a great analogy.
Okay, so plastics, which usually come from fossil fuels, are synthetic polymers.
Exactly. And DNA, proteins, cellulose, those are nature's polymers. They all share that same basic chain architecture, like different kinds of beads on different strings.
Okay, so here's the key insight that Go borrowed from biology. Why do natural polymers actually break down? It's not just some happy accident, right?
Not at all. It's by design. Natural polymers aren't just these smooth, homogeneous chains. They contain what he called tiny helper groups, or functional chemical groups, that are strategically built right into their structure.
Tiny helper groups. So what do?
They're basically the chemical equivalent of a self-destruct mechanism. They're positioned with incredible precision to make the chemical bonds holding the polymer chain together much easier to break when the time is right.
Or when certain triggers are present.
Exactly. When specific environmental triggers like water in a process called hydrolysis or specific enzymes are present, these helpers are the built-in vulnerability. They're the perforation line on a piece of paper that ensures the whole system can recycle itself.
I just find that incredible, that nature can design for both strength and scheduled failure at the exact same time.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
It is. So the central research question then became, what if we copy that structural trick? Could we build that same kind of programmed vulnerability right into our plastics?
Without sacrificing the strength and durability we actually need them for during their functional life.
That's the billion-dollar question.
That was the challenge. Because, traditional recycling relies on these massive external forces, huge amounts of energy like high heat or pressure or really harsh industrial chemicals just to crack those strong polymer bonds.
Right. You have to force it to break.
You have to force it. Gu's goal was to make the plastic intrinsically unstable, but only under common, everyday conditions after its useful life was over. And he wanted to do it just by changing the molecular architecture.
And based on their publication, they found a new chemical strategy that would let plastics degrade naturally at room temperature without needing any of those special energy-intensive industrial treatments.
Yes, and to prove it, they really needed a challenge. They didn't start with something easy like, a flimsy shopping bag.
No, they used a specific, highly durable material, polydicyclopentane. This is a really great example to show their success.
It's a fantastic test subject because it's known for its shear resistance.
Yeah.
We're talking about a material used in really heavy-duty engineering applications.
Like what?
Like tough vehicle body parts, bumpers, things like that. Specific electronic housings, resilient farm equipment. These are materials chosen specifically because they resist chemical attack, moisture, and extreme temperatures.
And if you look at how we recycle that stuff now, it's incredibly difficult. It often needs things like pyrolysis, super high heat without oxygen, or extreme chemical baths just to break it down.
And it typically resists hydrolysis completely. Water does nothing to it.
So to see their sample, which was made with this new degradable chemistry, start to break down on its own within a few days at normal room conditions.
That is the proof of concept. The sources even described this dramatic visual comparison they set up. You have a solid, fresh sample on the left.
And on the right.
The identical material after only 18 hours just exposed to the open air, and the sample on the right was already visibly degrading. It was starting to turn into a liquid or fragmenting.
In 18 hours.
Just 18 hours. That kind of self-deconstruction happening that quickly at ambient temperature and in a material that's designed for extreme durability, that confirms they successfully built in the self-destruct mechanism.
That transition from a material designed to last for decades of heavy use to one that starts degrading in less than a day is just, it's astonishing. And it really forces us to ask, how did they get that level of precise control?
To really get the breakthrough, we have to first appreciate the inherent strength of our synthetic plastics, the durability of materials like polyethylene or polypropylene. It comes from these incredibly stable chemical bonds.
You're talking about carbon bonds, right?
Yeah.
The CC bonds that form the backbone of the whole polymer chain.
Exactly. That's the backbone.
And chemical bonds are the glue. They're the energy investment that makes the plastic so resilient.
And to break those CC bonds in a traditional plastic requires a huge input of energy. We call it activation energy. This is why traditional plastics are so thermodynamically stable and, functionally immortal in a landfill. There just isn't enough ambient energy from heat, moisture, sunlight to get over that massive energy barrier.
Precisely. So the goal of the research wasn't to just replace those strong bonds with weaker ones.
No, that would be a terrible idea. That would compromise the material's performance completely during its use.
So the goal was to find a mechanism to dramatically lower that activation energy barrier for breaking those strong bonds, but
only when you want it to, only when it's prompted. They needed strength and a latent controlled vulnerability built right in.
and this is where the real key to the discovery is, right? It moves beyond just the basic chemical recipe and into this advanced molecular architecture. The breakthrough wasn't a totally new chemical formula, but a very specific, very precise way they arranged the components.
We're talking about spatial arrangement molecular geometry. They used those tiny helper groups we talked about, the ones borrowed from nature, but they didn't just sprinkle them randomly onto the polymer chain.
They had to be in a specific spot.
A perfect spot. They oriented these groups in the perfect position relative to their neighboring bonds. And this arrangement places the atoms precisely where they need to be to attack the strong CC bonds and kick off the breakdown, even at low ambient energy levels.
The analogy they used in the sources is fantastic for this. It's like folding a piece of paper so it tears easily along the crease. You haven't changed the paper's material at all. You've just engineered a stress concentration point through that arrangement. This idea of pre-folding the structure allows the internal reaction to start and the polymer to break apart literally thousands of times faster than a traditional polymer would under the same conditions.
Thousands of times faster. It's a huge difference.
But okay, hold on a minute. This raises a big question for me. If they're pre-folding or pre-stressing the material to make the bonds easier to break, how do they guarantee the plastic doesn't just fail prematurely?
That's the critical question.
Right. If I'm using this material for a car bumper that needs to withstand temperature extremes and road vibrations for 5 years, how do they make sure those helper groups don't just trigger breakdown in the middle of its use? I mean, that seems like a massive engineering gamble.
It would be, and that is the critical distinction here. It really highlights the brilliance of the chemical design. The material's basic, strong carbon-carbon backbone remains totally intact and functional during its intended use.
Okay.
The spatial arrangement only positions the helper groups to catalyze the reaction when a specific, often external trigger is introduced, or when that internal molecular clock, the precise geometry, reaches a certain point of instability.
So it's not inherently weak.
Not at all. It's intrinsically prepared to dismantle itself. The key is that the strong bonds require that helper group to be positioned just right to initiate what's called a favorable transition state. Without that trigger, or before the material's primary service life is over, the energy barrier is still way too high for just ambient temperature alone to cause a rapid failure.
So the elegance is that the molecule maintains its stability until that engineered self-deconstruction process is intentionally engaged.
Exactly. This controls the polymer's fate, and this is a finding they detailed meticulously in the 2025 Nature Chemistry publication.
And this structural control is what leads directly to the really massive real-world potential here. The ability to program a plastic's lifetime.
Yes. Dr. Gu emphasized that the exact spatial arrangement of these neighboring groups dramatically changes how fast the polymer degrades. What that means is the material's duration is now a selectable engineering parameter. You can dial it in.
That moves us so far beyond just simple durability. We're now designing for intentional impermanence. I mean, think about the huge variety of lifespans required in modern life.
Oh, absolutely.
You can contrast some specific use cases. What about a single-use blister pack for medication? Ideally, that should disappear in days.
Right, versus, say, a major construction plastic used in temporary scaffolding, that needs to maintain its structural integrity for maybe 6 months or even a year.
Two completely different requirements from the same basic idea.
And the ability to fine-tune the orientation and positioning of these helper groups during the synthesis process means the researchers can engineer the same base plastic to break down over days, months, or even years.
That is completely transformative.
It is. It means we can finally use high-performance, durable plastics for disposable items, knowing that their functional life, whether that's 24 hours or 24 months, is pre-programmed. It eliminates the problem of permanent waste right after disposal.
Essentially, what they've done is they've created a universal polymer design where durability is finally decoupled from permanence.
That's a perfect way to phrase it. And moving from that internal clock to an external remote control, this whole programmability feature is significantly enhanced by the control mechanisms the team also developed.
So it's not just a timer.
No. Breakdown can be, as we've discussed, just built in based on the polymer arrangement, so it degrades at a set rate. Or it can be actively switched on or off through external triggers.
Which adds a really crucial layer of flexibility, right? Especially for industrial or more specialized applications.
Immense flexibility. The team successfully demonstrated 2 specific external triggers that can activate the degradation process, which, as you say, adds another layer of control.
And what were those triggers?
The first one is ultraviolet light, UV light, and the second one is metal ions. Now, just think for a second about the enormous practical implications of just those 2 triggers.
Okay, let's take UV activation. I'm imagining a controlled waste stream facility. Instead of these huge energy-guzzling furnaces or chemical reactors,
Right.
you could just have massive banks of specific UV lamps. And when the plastic waste passes under this light, the UV energy kicks off the molecular rearrangement, it activates those pre-folded helper groups, and it starts this rapid degradation.
It's far more scalable and likely far, far cheaper than our current recycling methods.
And using metal ions, that provides another whole avenue for industrial control.
It does. Metal ions are typically catalysts, so you could have a short controlled rinse in a bath that contains specific, very low concentration metal ions, and that could instantly flip the chemical switch. It forces that latent self-deconstruction mechanism to engage.
So for specialized industrial waste or maybe a closed-loop manufacturing system, that's perfect control.
It's perfect. It lets the manufacturer decide exactly when and how the material dies. It completely removes the element of chance from the degradation process.
And the implication of this breakthrough, it goes way beyond just solving the global plastics crisis. As Dr. Gu noted, this is a really foundational change in material design. It enables entirely new categories of smart materials that are responsive and can perform actions way beyond just structural support.
Yes, let's dive into those innovative non-waste applications for a minute because they really showcase the versatility of this structural trickery. Gu highlighted timed drug release capsules as a prime example of high-precision programming.
So now we're moving from waste management to medical management.
A huge leap.
If you can precisely program the structural integrity of that polymer matrix to dissolve at a specific rate, you can control the rate at which a critical medicine is released into the body over time.
The value proposition here is enormous.
Yeah.
In so many chronic conditions, medication needs to be delivered at a constant rate to maintain a steady blood concentration, what they call a steady state.
And traditional capsules don't do that well. They often release the drug way too quickly. You get an initial peak and then a rapid decline.
Exactly. But with programmed polymers, drug developers could engineer capsules that dissolve precisely over hours, days, or even weeks. For instance, a capsule might need to dissolve over 48 hours for an antibiotic regimen.
Or maybe over 6 weeks for a slow-release hormone therapy.
Right. And the specific orientation of the polymer geometry is what dictates that release rate. It's all in the design.
And the second application he mentioned, self-erasing coatings, that speaks directly to temporary industrial needs. I'm thinking of those temporary protective layers they apply during manufacturing or shipping of sensitive goods, like electronics or optics.
This solves a very common industrial headache, the cleanup phase. If you have a temporary adhesive or protective film used during assembly, getting it off later requires manual labor, chemical solvents, or physical abrasion.
All of which carry risks of damaging the final product or just creating more waste streams.
Right. But instead, you could just program the coating to disappear when its function is complete. For example, programming a temporary screen protector on a new phone to dissolve entirely when it's exposed to standard sunlight, to UV after you unpack it.
Or designing a mold release agent that just vanishes after it reacts to a simple shift in humidity or temperature in the factory.
It dramatically streamlines industrial processes. Gu summarized the impact by saying this research not only opens the door to more environmentally responsible plastics, but also broadens the toolbox for designing smart, responsive, polymer-based materials across many fields, including things like advanced electronics and medical implants. This structural trick is really about achieving total material mastery.
And it all connects back to that initial inspiration, right? The jarring juxtaposition of immortal trash in pristine nature. Gu's ultimate goal remains perfectly clear. Plastics should serve their purpose, and then they should disappear.
And this approach is just a practical, elegant execution of that philosophy. It offers a chemistry-based way to redesign these materials so they perform excellently during use, but they carry their own execution order built right into their molecular structure.
It fundamentally shifts the responsibility for end of life.
It does. It moves it away from this external infrastructure and places it back into the hands of the material itself.
So, as with any groundbreaking material science, the moment the chemistry is proven, that's when the real work starts, right? The rigorous testing for safety, the hard engineering for manufacturing, and the environmental safety question has to be paramount. If these plastics break down, what exactly are they breaking down into?
That is the ultimate hurdle for global acceptance. It's a huge one. If the polymer just breaks down into soluble components that are harmful, toxic small molecules that get into the soil or the water, then we've just exchanged the visible problem of physical accumulation.
For the invisible, maybe more insidious problem of chemical contamination.
Precisely. The good news is that the initial findings from Gu's lab are encouraging. Early tests showed that the liquid produced by the degradation process is not toxic.
That's a huge foundational finding. It suggests that the final breakdown products, the very smallest soluble molecules, are likely benign. Maybe just simple, non-toxic organic compounds and not persistent harmful chemicals.
Absolutely. However, as responsible scientists, Yu's team acknowledges the immense complexity that still remains. The crucial next step is the rigorous study of the intermediary stage.
What do you mean by that?
Well, whether the tiny pieces that the plastics break down into the microplastic equivalent scale pieces that might not fully dissolve instantly are harmful to living things or the environment.
Okay. This is where the whole debate around microplastics comes in.
It is.
Because even if the final liquid is non-toxic, if the plastic hangs around as these micro or nanoparticles for an extended period, those fragments can still be ingested by organisms. They could cause physical harm, or they could leach other chemicals used in the manufacturing process, like stabilizers or colorants.
That's right. The field of microplastic toxicology is still relatively new, and the team has to prove that this intentional degradation is environmentally benign from start to finish.
It's not enough for the end product to be safe.
No, they have to ensure the safety of the entire degradation pathway. They have to protect everything from soil microbes and plant root systems all the way to aquatic life. This means detailed, multi-stage toxicology studies, measuring the effects of these intermediates on a whole variety of organisms.
And at the same time as all that safety testing, there's the immense challenge of scaling this process for mass manufacturing, fitting this delicate laboratory discovery into the real world of high-volume plastics production.
This is often the point where revolutionary chemistry just hits the wall of industrial reality. The team is currently looking at how their chemical process, which relies on achieving these extremely precise spatial arrangements and delicate structural tuning, can be seamlessly integrated with regular, high-volume plastics manufacturing methods.
Things like extrusion and injection molding.
Exactly. It's one thing to synthesize a small batch in a lab flask. It's a completely different thing to run tons of this material through a high-speed extruder that melts and forces the polymer through a tiny die at high pressure 24 hours a day.
That heat and that sheer stress could easily disrupt the precise molecular architecture they worked so hard to establish.
That is the core technical challenge. Maintaining that molecular precision, that pre-folding during high-throughput, high-temperature processing is immensely difficult. If the manufacturing process disturbs the orientation of those helper groups, the plastic might lose its programmed functionality.
So it could go one of two ways. It could either become prematurely weak and just unusable,
or it could lose its ability to degrade rapidly altogether, and you're right back to a traditional immortal plastic.
So quality control becomes infinitely more complex. It's not just about checking the recipe. It's about the structural integrity of the final product, which is defined at the atomic level.
Exactly. And this means they have to work directly with existing plastic makers who understand the constraints of mass production and who, crucially, recognize and embrace the commercial need for truly sustainable materials.
The capital investment must be huge. To transition existing fossil fuel-based polymer production lines to accommodate this new chemistry has to be significant.
It is. So Gu's optimism isn't just based on the chemistry working, it's also based on the economic viability and the engineering feasibility. The new polymer not only has to function perfectly and degrade safely, it also has to be cost competitive with the incredibly cheap traditional plastics that are flooding the market right now.
A huge set of challenges.
He acknowledged that the technical and economic challenges certainly remain. But he did express confidence that with continued development and strong collaboration with forward-thinking industry partners, this highly tunable chemistry could eventually replace key components of the everyday plastics we use, finally making a substantial dent in the global waste problem by attacking it right at the point of origin: material design.
And before we move to our final thoughts, it's really vital to acknowledge the collaborative nature of this kind of breakthrough. The foundational study published in Nature Chemistry was the result of a dedicated team of Rutgers scientists.
Indeed. The successful implementation of this specific structural strategy was spearheaded by a doctoral student, Xiaojin Yin, who was the first author on the paper.
And there were others.
Yes, key collaborators who contributed significantly to the research included Associate Professor Lu Wang, doctoral student Rui Zhang, Research Associate Professor N. Sanjeeva Murthy, and a former visiting undergraduate student, Ria Haozu. It's really a collective effort that has given us this new capacity to program the demise of matter.
So let's bring this remarkable journey back to you, the informed learner. We've explored how, by adopting this elegant structural trick from nature for the very architecture of biological polymers like DNA, we can design synthetic polymers to be strong, functional, and durable, while at the same time engineering their rapid, safe, and controlled collapse.
And it's not a distant theoretical concept. The ability to program a plastic's lifespan over days, months, or years is a genuinely transformative capability.
It really is. It offers a practical, scalable pathway to solve the waste accumulation crisis without having to rely solely on massive and, let's be honest, often ineffective global recycling infrastructure.
This exploration fundamentally highlights a critical paradigm shift in material science. We are transitioning from the age of simply designing enduring materials, things intended to last indefinitely, to the age of designing materials with an intentional end of life.
I like that phrase, intentional end of life.
It encourages us to discard the flawed assumption that durability and disposability are mutually exclusive traits. They're not. Instead, they are becoming engineered features, controlled with precision by molecular geometry and architecture.
It's the ultimate sustainable design principle, isn't it? Maximal functionality followed by a programmed disappearance. And as we learned, this technology extends far beyond simple packaging. It could potentially lead to highly precise medical devices like those timed drug release capsules, or critical industrial applications like self-erasing protective coatings.
You have to think about that powerful convergence of disciplines. You've got fundamental chemistry, environmental responsibility, industrial engineering, and modern medicine, all centered on one singular, elegant structural principle.
It's all connected.
If we can control the dissolution of high-performance packaging with a simple burst of UV light, or with the presence of some specific metal ions, the potential applications are just staggering.
We tend to focus on the physical objects, the bottles, the casings, the films. But think about the broader application of having a programmable expiration date. If we can apply this control to complex material matrices, what other non-physical consumer goods or industrial processes could benefit from a time-locked, self-erasing mechanism?
That's a fascinating thought.
I mean, think about temporary information storage layered onto physical surfaces, or maybe sophisticated financial documents that are designed to chemically neutralize themselves after a specific audit period. The mastery of programmed impermanence invites us to rethink not just our plastics, but everything we expect to last.